Hey guys, today we're going to talk about adjustable wrenches and how to use them. So, whenever I first talked about the first 14 tools I think everyone should have, the adjustable wrench, specifically the crescent style adjustable wrench, was number 3 or 4. And there's a whole lot of uses. I actually just built this little stand to hold just a bolt so I can demonstrate how to properly use these, and I can use that in the future for other things, I'm sure. But quick little history lesson. There was like a famous explorer. It was a solo flight. I'm correcting myself here. It was a solo flight. I'll actually just read it off of Wikipedia. So on his famous 1927 solo flight across the Atlantic, Charles Lindbergh said that he took only gasoline, sandwiches, a bottle of water, a crescent wrench, and pliers. There were rumors that Richard Evelyn Byrd, on his initial journey to Alaska, had a crescent wrench in his provisions. So a lot of people back then really saw the application of these style wrenches. About that same time, you had what's called the Ford wrench. So the Ford wrench, I think, really I should have looked this up before I started, but the Ford wrench, to my knowledge and understanding, came with a Model T, and you're supposed to be able to do all the work on a Model T with just a Ford wrench. I don't know if that's true or not, but I always thought it was just called a Ford wrench because it looked like an F. Now this is handy. This takes more of the form of like an actual wrench, right? With just this lower jaw that is adjustable. Whereas this is a 90-degree wrench, and this thing can open up way more. I think this can open up to 3 inches. This is a small one. I have a bigger one that's probably about 2.5 feet long at work. And these are really good, especially when you're working on like hydraulic hoses on like an excavator, because it can grab at a different angle. So you got those two styles. Everybody knows about the knipex plier wrench. These are actually pretty dang worn down. These I don't think I'd ever get warranted if I broke them, but this is kind of, it takes the Cobra pliers and a crescent wrench and kind of puts the two together. So you have this plier wrench, you have this extreme leverage that works on this cam here and raises and lowers the bottom jaw, and you have this push button to adjust. Two other things. So this one, I posted this on a YouTube short. And I called this the ratcheting crescent hammer. I found out, doing a little bit more research, this is actually called a mining wrench. So they have this hammer face here, they have the adjustable jaws. These actually come all the way out. You can flip it. It got these little teeth. There you go. It got those little teeth there. And it will bite. It's not great. It's not like a knipex or a pipe wrench, but it will grab round stuff. And I don't know, it's kind of gimmicky, but this thing's actually been pretty useful. I can throw this in a bag. Has the hammer face, 1/2-inch drive ratchet, reversible. You can use this for all kinds of cool stuff, but the mining wrench, I feel like this would be a good like bug out tool, or a good thing to like keep in your toolbox at all times, like your truck toolbox in the backseat of your truck somewhere, just because it has so many little uses. And lastly, I don't know what you call this thing. It's kind of a box end universal This is between 23 and 32 inches, or 23 and 32 millimeter, or 13/16 to 1 1/4. And I've actually tested this out on a few things. On a kind of just a gimmicky thing, honestly. It works well, but it's kind of weird. Anyways, so the way that I would recommend you use this thing, and the way that Crescent recommends you use this thing, so if you look at the top here, it actually has this arrow pointing in the direction that you're supposed to turn it. So what you're going to find a lot is every time you use one of these tools, it has a preferred direction. But when you're putting your wrench on said fastener, what I like to do is I like to get it close, and then if you're trying to break something loose, you're going to need it on there a little tighter, and I like to rock it back and forth while tightening this screw in to get as little play as possible, and then you can break it loose. So again, I am turning, when I'm trying to break stuff loose especially, I'm trying to push down, so that way you're kind of pushing this bottom jaw in and you're going in the direction of this arrow. Very simple. Now obviously there is a time and a place where we're going to have to turn it backwards, and actually that's tightening for this. I'm tightening the screw, that's it, the bolt, getting it on there and tightening it. Now if you're working fast and it's not super tight, I mean, you can kind of just tighten real fast, turn. I'm turning backwards. Here. Loosen, and you can just kind of go from there. Loose, tighten, turn. And it's kind of tedious. Basically, you're just tightening, turning, loosening, resetting. It's tedious. And I think that's kind of where this thing shines, is when you go to do it, you can tighten, or in this case I'm loosening, but you can tighten, let go of the jaws, tighten, let go of the jaws, tighten. And that's why this is actually a really nice setup. That's why a lot of people prefer these over the Crescent, is because you can reset much faster. Now the downside is this is more dependent on direction than the Crescent is, and I'll show you why in a second. So with this, obviously you want to get your adjustment as close as possible, preferably slightly above, and you're going to want to apply pressure on the top here, and it self-tightens itself, right? I don't know if you see that. Self-tightens. But if you try to go the opposite direction, it doesn't, it just falls apart. And that's just because of how that cam mechanism in there works. So you don't have to squeeze the whole time when you're tightening down. That is not necessary with this design. You don't have to squeeze and then tighten. It's not channel lock. But if you're going to go in the reverse direction, because like say that's the only way you have clearance, then you do have to squeeze to turn. Alright. I feel like I should put this on my right side. So, recap, so you can see it from probably a more direction you're used to seeing. Down for tightening. You don't want to turn the opposite direction necessarily. Again, with this design, it doesn't matter as much as with this design. You can turn, but if you try to that way, don't work. Unless you're squeezing really good and you have to squeeze a little bit extra just to do it. Then the Ford wrench, it's the same deal. as the crescent. Really, you're gonna turn into the adjustable jaw. So again, get it on there. Tighten. Reset. I'm kind of working blind here. Tighten. And so on. And this exact same thing. Don't worry about that. This is kind of where it's a little interesting. So this thing, kind of just get it on there, and that cam pushes up against, and you're actually getting 3 points of contact there when you're turning. So reset. And again, I don't even know what the hell this thing's called. I kind of just found it. Figured I could add it into the little lineup of adjustable wrenches. It's kind of a self-adjusting wrench. You do have a few other styles that I don't have here currently, like the Weeha. I think it's called Weeha, the brand, where the jaw is kind of separate from the actual handle. It's not a fixed jaw. And kind of like with the knipex plier wrench, as you let off on it, it's a very much directional wrench. As you let off on it, the jaws open up, but when you go to push down, they clamp back down, and they're kind of more of a universal wrench size. And then there's a lot of like attempts to mimic this style, but honestly, I would just go with the knipex if you're going to get the plier wrench. Otherwise, just go with the classics design. Either is going to work great for you. I think both, really I think all three designs here is optimal, just because you have the best of both worlds. You have the more traditional straight, that, and really I feel like you can apply much more torque with this than you can the other designs. But you have the straight traditional, you have a 90 degree in case you run into that situation, and you have the option to go much bigger with a much more compact tool. And then you have something that makes just turning fasteners very enjoyable. I'm trying to think if there's anything I want to add to this. Now again, crescent wrenches come in all kinds of crazy sizes. I think you're probably best to start off with a 10-inch or a 12-inch if you're going to get one. If you're going to get a Ford wrench, they're very hard to find. But if you go on a Snap-on truck, I was able to pick this up for $100. Or you can find them at vintage stores, vintage like furniture or vintage antique stores. I think I paid $15 for this one. And this one stays in the garage. This one usually is at work. But they come in handy. They come in handy. So there's your options there. You can probably find them online. I mean, if you want to find this, I've only found one of these on Amazon for like $60. It seems like it's more well made, except it doesn't have the fixed ratchet end. It looks like it's something it looks like a spline on the end, and then you have a 1/2-inch drive that I guess plugs into it, so that way you have a more streamlined tool. And finally, this, you can get these anywhere knipex products are sold, as far as I know. You can get them off of tool trucks. You can get the Harbor Freight version. There's a Mac version. Honestly, the Mac version I think has the better button than the knipex, but I feel like knipex is the highest quality, and you're supporting the original designer, which is always good. And now this isn't a tool review, but I figured I could also mention a few things. that you can do with this style wrench as well. So you can actually do a little bit of crimping. So say you have some kind of like metal structure. I'm trying to think how to explain what I'm thinking, because I've used it a lot at work for that purpose. So like say you have two pieces of metal that run parallel together and you're trying to bring them a little closer but not too close, you can actually set it, feed it in, and squeeze, and it'll only squeeze it a little bit, and you can adjust from there. And then another thing I can kind of demonstrate with this is you can grab flat stock and you can actually bend metal and stuff with that. So a lot of great options. Some people came home. I hope you guys like this video. See you in the next one.